Welcome to Silicon Valley Asian Business Talk.
Hello, everyone. This is Roger Chen from University of San Francisco Center for Business Studies and Innovation in Asia Pacific. Today, I want to first thank the Chinese Entrepreneur Organization for hosting this interview at this very unique venue, which is the founding place of Facebook. Second, it's our honor to welcome Dawei Feng from Intel to join our interview program. Dawei, would you please briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Roger. Hey, everyone. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. As Roger introduced briefly, I work for Intel. I manage all the client segment marketing team at Intel. Outside of the work, I have been pretty active in mentoring Chinese in the Bay Area from career perspective, as well as advising a few of the startups.
Thank you.
How will AI change computer and electronic devices?
Because you are the expert in this computer AI industry, and maybe can you kind of give us your view about the general trends in the client AI market and industry?
Yeah, for sure. Ever since precisely a year ago, we couldn't get through any customer meetings without talking about AI. A lot of interest in understanding how AI is going to be the transformative force for our industry, client-focused, obviously, but at the highest level, what we learned by talking with all the customers, partners, as well as software developers was the general trend is there's a lot of interest of harnessing the power of AI. And there's the general notion of if the workload could move to client or edge devices, there's a strong desire to move toward client and edge devices.
Established business logic and challenges in innovation.
From your kind of vantage point of view, what are the typical challenges established companies face to deal with those innovations or changes in market technologies?
Yeah, from my personal point of view, I can't say I have a broad set of samples, but by looking at the real life examples as well as learning from history as well as the books, one of the fundamental challenges really is how to tell when a technology is going through the inflection point. Because at an early stage, many technologies look very promising. And it's very easy to think from my perspective, there's an adjacent technology that's emerging and that's looking really good. So if I'm a B business unit general manager, there's constantly a strong urge of put together a team to really look into double down, triple down in this new area. And if and when this new area is becoming the dominant force of the next wave of the technology innovation, then I'm in a great place.
Yeah.
It sounds great. A couple of problems. One, how do I know that this one will be successful? Because the innovation by definition is a high risk value proposition. There's more failures than success in innovation. So how do I know I'm investing too early or maybe sometimes too late? And how do I tell if one technology can go through the inflection point and be successful? And how do I tell if the early, early indications is not strong enough to really suggest that technology will go somewhere? So, and the other problem I see, in particular in large corporation, would be if we invest in, if a large corporation is investing in a new field, it tends to be heavy, meaning top to bottom infrastructure, management layers, the amount of resources, etc., to a point that it's no longer nimble anymore, as compared to in the startup world. You're not going to spend a dime unless you're for sure that dime will generate the right amount of return. So there's just all these reasons why living in the Silicon Valley, seeing all these disruptors coming from garages and houses like this one with a minimum amount of funding, and it's just fascinating. And I think it makes a lot of sense why the whole startup community and ecosystem will continue to innovate in a lot of ways, disrupt the incumbents.
Actually, it's very interesting. I want to kind of ask kind of follow-up question, because you said for large corporations, typically if they want to kind of commit or bet in certain area, has to be very heavy investment, top down. I'm basically talking about for large corporations, if they commit, it has to be big business enough. And that's why it requires this kind of very holistic, systematic commitment. The second question is, now we understand this is one of the key challenges. Anything large corporation can do to make it more nimble, to be less cumbersome?
Yeah. I wouldn't say this is for sure the problem or the singular problem or the biggest problem, but this is one of the challenges, which is if I have a huge P&L, profit and loss, in managing my everyday business, then to really get me as the general manager excited about a new venture, the hurdle just gone up significantly, right? If I manage a multi-billion-dollar P&L, then the new venture is going to bring $1 million or $2 million per year.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of rounding error until 100 times or even more in the size. So, and that's essentially a lot of the reasons why when some of these technologies are in the very early stages, yes, we know they're interesting, but it's kind of hard for us to really put our weight behind it until it's much bigger. Then the problem is when it becomes much bigger, it'll accelerate and it becomes a force of disruption.
Corporate innovation challenges solution and limitation.
The second question is, now we understand this is one of the key challenges. Anything large corporation can do to make it more nimble?
I wish I know the right way to do it. It's a very difficult, right? So I think there are all kinds of different ways of managing this. One of the ways is really just have a very strong and broad set of research teams within the corporation so that you're always keeping pulse of the latest and greatest and have a mechanism to really monitor what, if any of the new fields will become promising very rapidly. Like I said earlier, multiple times going through that inflection point. But also, even when you do that, it's very hard because the inflection point is something you only know it after the fact. You can't really effectively predict that's what's going to happen. So that's why multiple books, Innovator's Dilemma, as well as other books, have been spending chapters and chapters talking about this. So I wouldn't claim I know the magic answer. I think that my biggest takeaway myself is respect the fact that I don't know what I don't know, and be ready to accept that based on that, there will be disruptions that's outside of our domain, and how do we make sure that we are there when some of the major movements are happening so that we're not disrupted. So what I like to say is if there's something new emerging that's going to disrupt somebody and you don't know what that disruptive force is going to challenge, then our own business might be the one being disrupted. So you need to be super vigilant about things, and that's why one of the Intel founders, Andy Grove, had this famous book, Only Paranoid Survive. And I believe in that.
Actually relating to that, as an outsider, maybe some people may ask, how about acquisition? You may not be the right company finding, but other company you find promising, large company, have a lot of money. So what's your comment to that kind of a question?
Yeah, of course, there are many successful cases, and there are many not so successful cases. So I think it's absolutely one of the ways I see big corporations, even smaller corporations, use and adopt. And like I said, there are a lot of cases that become very successful, and there are a lot of cases it may not be very successful.
Why? Could you kind of elaborate based on why some of the times the acquisition may not be the right solution?
Yeah, I think I'll be very general. And,
yeah, of course.
And one of the reasons is integration. How do you integrate or not? Right? Do you keep it a standalone business, or you integrate it into existing business? And there are pros and cons of doing either way, and it's very situational. And some other cases, it's the technology you acquired might be too early. To the earlier point, you may thought that this is going to be successful in going through the inflection point, and it may turn out to not be the case. And that's the risk intrinsically.
You shoot that wrong in a sense.
There is no guarantee that you bet big is you're going to bet right. There's no guarantee on that. And there's also this, how organic is the new asset to be integrated into your overall business, right? If I manage a huge corporation and I have abundant amount of cash, I literally can go out and hunt for any new business, but doesn't mean you don't have organic integration with my existing business. So what is that connection? I've seen cases where there seems to be a layer of connection. Only when you try to do the business and product integration, you realize it's actually pretty hard, and the connection may not be as organic as it appears when the M&A report was written. So there's that disconnect from the vision and reality. So there could be many ways it goes wrong. So personally, I view this as a high risk value proposition intrinsically. So you have to respect that.
How and where to detect early market trend and or opportunities.
What's your comment or observation about changing internally to adapt to the new market, new technology, new trend? What's your comment or observation on that?
Yeah. I wish I know there's a good recipe to manage this. I think the biggest challenge is inertia. If the corporation is going well, is sizable in business and P&L and customer engagement, it's very easy to be carried forward because of the past momentum and inertia.
So when it's successful, people say, why you want to change that success?
Right. And also, to quote the Henry Ford quote, if you ask customers what they want faster horses.
Okay.
So how do you avoid falling in the trap of, the customers just told us they want faster horses, that's what we're making. And then Ford came in with Model T, wiped the slate clean, right? But the customers told us, so are they wrong or am I wrong? Actually, both are wrong, right? That's the piece I call, we may have asked the wrong question. Instead, we should have asked, what's the result customer you want to accomplish? You want a faster, more efficient way of getting from point A to point B. That brings you out of the narrow framing of faster horses and to go look into potential disruptive new technologies to make point A to point B way easier, faster, more efficient, right? So again, it's so much easier said than done in doing this. So how do we know that we're being carried forward by inertia versus being vigilant in detecting a potential pivotal moment that's coming up? I think that's, personally, I view that's more art than science. But there are a lot of tea leaves we can read, and in in the book, I mentioned Andy Grove wrote Only Paranoia Survive. I think he had some sound advices. He mentioned always stay connected to two groups of people who are always the first to detect when some changes are happening. May or may not be the so-called inflection point, but they are the early detectors of potential changes. One is our salespeople.
Sales.
They are
very close.
Frontline, talking with all kinds of customers, partners, external people. So they sense some of the new directions a little bit faster than other people. Internally, you call talk with their middle level managers. So they're not so deep into the weeds, but they're not so removed from everyday operations. So they're integrating a lot of information from your frontline workers, quote, so to speak. So they have a real good front row seat to detect when some new signals are happening that may or may not become a new inflection point. So I've been thinking a lot about that. I read a book quite a few years ago. I've been thinking a lot about these two groups of people, including myself, used to be the frontline sales person myself. I can see a lot of validity.
Startup, product market fit and go to problems.
I know you have been very active mentoring startup companies and new ventures, entrepreneurs. So actually, from your perspective, because your perspective is very unique, right? You represent corporate executives. So from your perspective, what are the unique challenges, these or lessons these startup companies tend to face, actually?
I think there's a self-selection bias. I just want to put it out there because the startups who are seeking advices are typically the ones running into kind of problems, right? If everything is going so well, I'm so busy fulfilling orders, I have more orders than I can ever fulfill. I don't have time to ask for advice. I don't need advice.
Interesting, because the people seeking advice typically are running into some issues.
Typically, but by saying that, I'm offending a lot of people who seek advices. So I shouldn't say that.
No, that's honestly very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a little bit self-selection bias to begin with, and then I think based on my relatively limited experiences, I think there are a number of different areas. One, in particular, it could be buried fairly deep, but if I just simplify, is the uncertainty about, do I have a product market fit problem, or do I have a go-to-market problem? The reason I say that is,
first, could you kind of clarify these two different type of problem, go-to-market versus product market fit?
Of course. So if I have a go-to-market problem, means my product actually is really good.
Oh, okay. So how do you scale?
And it's just my customers haven't notified that I have really good product or products for them yet. So that is a go-to-market problem. I just need to make them aware of my products. Then I'm good. I'm golden, right? But then a lot of the reasons why the customers aren't aware, or is your product may not have hit the right product market fit. So these two could be very nuanced. So that's why when I talk with relatively mature and successful startup founders, one common theme I would hear is product market fit is one of those moments that only in hindsight that's the moment you hit the product market fit. But before you hit that moment, you may have a lot of confidence. My tech, my product, everything is so good. I just need to get 10, 20, 50 customers sign up for it. But that's where the confusion really happens. And that's where a lot of early stage founders really need just a additional insights, perspective, as well as just oftentimes it's just willing to listen ears to hear them out.
So actually, maybe to go further, you say there are two type of problems you see startup company. One is the go-to-market, probably is more or less like an execution problem.
Mm-hmm.
These product market is searching for the right product. So you mentioned about something, company you do, a startup company you do to kind of search for the product market fit. Do you have any kind of suggestion, see the successful lessons or failures in even the go-to-market kind of part of it?
Yeah, so let me separate these two, and again, I'll stay fairly general, higher level. When search for product market fit, I think in particular the founders who are less experienced, what I noticed is they somehow got confused between when they're building the pitch for the VCs versus when they're building the pitch for the customers. But what I mean by that is when I'm building a pitch for VC, I somehow want to say that the total addressable market for me is infinite. It's so big that you got to put money in me now. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on this rocket ship, right? However, that set of pitch doesn't work with your prospect, your potential customers. Why? When you say, hey, any problem you have, I can solve. That's one way to lose credit instantaneously when you're approaching the prospect. So that's why when people pitch to VCs, they tend to generalize their tech and solution and generalize the total addressable market. My advice, and this is hard for a lot of people to do, is when you pitch to a prospect, you have to be extremely precise and narrow. Say, I have a product, I have a tool that solves one problem. It solves that problem so well, I can say this is the best tool for this problem. Even though this problem seems to be relatively small, it doesn't give me the $100 billion total addressable market, but that's how you lock in the first set of customers.
Yeah, I think that's very, very good. So how about the second issue, actually, say go-to-market? So what's your kind of advice?
A number of challenges. It really is, we've got to start with what's causing the problem. Because like I said, I was saying without saying the conclusion, a lot of times I saw that the founders thought they had a go-to-market problem. They really have a product market fit problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then if me as an advisor, I tell them, well, really, you have a product market fit problem. That could be very hurtful for their feelings.
Why?
Because they feel all this confidence in their tech, in their technology.
Oh, they are kind of emotional.
So much energy building that. They got so much initial positive responses from whoever they talk to. When I tell them you don't have a product market fit, PMF, emotionally it's not easy to accept, right? So that's why I want to ease into that. However, there are true cases where go-to-market could be a problem, and that's where we can be super tactical. Depending on the business model, do we rely more on outbound or inbound, or it's a both, right? And what's the ideal customer profile? The big, mid, small, and how much the customer can do self-onboarding, how much this is a high touch, have to go through a long period of time with the solid hands from your customer success department to manage it through before you see the first dollar coming in, right? So this is where it can be very pragmatically addressed based on the answers to these few questions, and there are more or less mature tools and processes to go do a lot of that.
Right.
But there are some other go-to-market problems are a little bit harder to address, which is the nature of long, unpredictable decision-making process. In particular, when the startups selling into large corporations. It could be extremely frustrating. Every single step of the way, I feel like you're making progress, but nobody can give you the ultimate, yes, I'm going to use your product. And there's no timeline when you can get to that yes eventually. So it could be very frustrating when navigating that. And that's why there are another set of processes and tools and methodologies could be deployed to help in those situations as well.
Startups, how to sell to corporate customers.
What's your advice to startup companies, I mean B2B startup companies that want to sell to the large corporations like Intel or any other large corporations? And what's your advice to them, from your perspective, right?
First, just to be clear, when I'm advising these companies outside of work, I'm really representing myself, right? Not a big corporation.
Yeah.
I think in general, the advice to 2B startups is, like I said, recognize which layer of the enterprise customers you're targeting. The bigger ones, the mid-tier, or the small ones. And the reason that is very important is ultimately the check size, or I shouldn't say check size, the deal size will vary significantly. If the deal size isn't going to be enough to justify dedicated sales personnel for this particular opportunity, then you got to rely more on the tools and scaling technologies to try win these opportunities versus going deep with one particular large prospect. But then let's just say you have large potential deal size and your business is perfect for the largest side of the enterprise customers. Then be ready to take on a long, windy journey where I say many people can say no to you, but you're going to struggle to find one person to say yes to your product. So you're going to burn a lot of time and seemingly make a lot of progress and still unsure whether or not you're going to make it, you're gonna win this deal or not. Just mentally be prepared is the good start. Otherwise, there will be a number of false positive indicators along the way that'll set your hope high, your team's hope high, your investors' hope high prematurely. So that's probably the number one advice I have. So that's why having healthy pipeline is really everything, because once you have a healthy pipeline, it's almost like fill the long pipe with continuous water, so that yes, from your the pipe coming to the house to the garden hose, it's a long rope. It may take 5 minutes for the water to go through, but eventually your pipeline is full. So even though some prospects may take, quote, forever for you to win, but eventually some others will flow through, as long as you have that enough qualified leads coming into our pipeline. A lot of times the early stage companies are so betting on one or two potential prospects, and that's a very risky value proposition, because once the one or two didn't materialize, or you just never really see through the process, then you don't have other opportunities to back up to keep the business going.
Why large corporations not adopt startup products?
Do you basically suggest startup companies to target large corporations maybe later, because as you mentioned, it takes much longer time, riskier, probably more failures. So logically, if you're a very early startup company, you don't have a lot of bandwidth, to kind of to deal with that phase. Does that mean you should probably target mid-sized company, small-sized company earlier? Than when they're strong enough, then they can think about large corporation?
That's absolutely one way to navigate the situation. And I would say the biases would be highly situational. Some business model is natural fit for the Fortune 100, 500 companies, then you chose to go after them. You don't have, other choices because that's
anything you think these companies can do to mitigate those risks and or frustration selling to large corporations? Anything they can do to improve that?
Yeah, no, there's a lot. I think fundamentally it goes back to the product market fit. You have a very strong value proposition. You're addressing something with a 10x of efficiency gain. I hear this a lot. Oh, my product is so unique. I don't have competitor in the market. Sort of true, but not entirely, because you're replacing something, and people are doing something using whatever conventional methodologies. So you may not have a look-alike competitor. Doesn't mean they don't have any other solution today. So we'll put that on the side. 20, 30, 40% better typically doesn't sell because in enterprise environment, changing something would typically involve changing out some of the plumbing connections with other pieces
the
of
whole
the
infrastructure system.
Exactly. So say, hey, do you want 30, 40, 50% better in whatever the key performance indicators are? Of course I do, but would I rip out the entire house of plumbing for 50% better efficiency? I am not entirely sure, right? So that's why having that 10x efficiency mentality is critical, and a lot of times of course it's easier said than done, but then when you identify that particular point, you can deliver 10x efficiency, then the enterprise customers may start to feel like, oh, okay, this is so disruptive, even though it may take me to upgrade my entire infrastructure to support this, but I want to do this for a couple of reasons. Because first, it's 10x efficiency gain. Second, I also need to watch out if my competitors are deploying something like this earlier, faster than I do. Would that translate into significant competitive edge they have over me? Because I'm running older infrastructure, so to speak, right? So you have a lot of influence. Then at that point, again, 10, 20, 30% wouldn't cut it. Significant gain in the disruptive, transformative nature will put you at a way better position.
Sell to corporate customers, organizational barriers.
You're talking about the purely business rational perspective, how to persuade large corporations to adopt these startup companies' products. Do you also see a problem of navigating the bureaucracies, either political power structures, influences that many startup companies they need to learn? Could you comment on that? Because large corporation, as you mentioned, it's never simple, like one or two, sometimes they do not know who's making decision.
Correct.
So what's your kind of advice to startup companies?
So first to recognize it's a long, winding road. Like I mentioned earlier, just when I talk to people, I try to prepare them, and they say, yeah, I hear you, but only 5, 6, 9 months later, they come back and say, oh, now I fully understand what it meant. And then recognize that there will be people playing different roles in the organization. Some are visible, meaning they're the friendly face. I call it a gatekeeper. If you're lucky, you can find the internal champion who not only are willing to work with you, but also willing to push this project forward internally with you. And that's really important. And then you recognize that there are people who will say no to this. And do you understand who they are, why they say no? And is it business reason? Is it political reason? Is a personal reason? It's a combination of all these. And the hardest part is the people who say no may not be visible to you. So how do you even know, right? And then, if you can find a champion, then who are the people who can ultimately make this thing happen along with your internal champion, right? And why they are putting their own effort into this, and a lot of times their own career future somehow connected.
So there's like a personal interest associated with that.
Right, and I understand that it could be that this project is so transformative to a point that there is a young, doesn't have to be young, but young upcoming manager that's seizing this as an opportunity to say, hey, if I do this right, I can short circuit my career by 5 years.
Yeah.
Great, if you can find that person. But then when you find that person, you've got to realize that's going to disrupt another person's career, right? And that person that you may or may not realize exists will likely say no to the project internally without you ever know, right? So how do you balance that? It's a fairly complex. It's just having that mental model is going to be complex, and don't have the false hope of this is going to be easy win. If it's going to be easy win, then you celebrate because you hit the jackpot, so to speak. Right? In most cases, people can't bank on luck. You have to bank on the right methodology, processes, and ways of doing things. And then really have a good account leader to help you navigate the complex account, the internal politics, hierarchy.
You mean the internal champion kind of in that case?
Well, your own people, your own person
also, right.
who is leading
the deal. Owning this, right.
Exactly, owning the project. Could be sales leader, could be product leader, could be your one of your co-founders who is personally in charge of this, right? Just to recognize that it's a process to go through, and it's a complex map of people to navigate through to potentially have a chance and have the mental model that it may take a long time.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with it, because if you're not okay with it, then as time goes by, you as the founding team for the startup will become more desperate.
Right.
And that's going to drive irrational decisions.
Startup working with corporate partners, mistakes and advice.
My next question we already touched upon, which is establish corporations not as customers, but as partners. Because I know many startup companies work with large corporations. So do you have any advice or kind of observation about the typical mistakes or lessons that startup companies should know in order to effectively work with a corporation as a partners?
Yeah. I have a couple of examples actually working with one of the startups over the past few years. Initially, the company was working with one of the biggest corporations in the world in the cloud space. I wouldn't name the name for obvious reasons, but let's just say really good technical engagement. A large cloud company was saying all the right things to the founding team, weekly meetings, product integration, helping each other. That's been going really well until to the point that the startup team asked the big corporation, say, hey, now can you bring some leads to us? Because we've been working on this product technology integration for a long time. You've been telling us that we're able to complement your solution. Why don't you bring some leads to us? And then
customers to the startups, right?
Yeah, prospects. Basically. And then the startup team realized it is not as straightforward. It's very difficult. And there are a lot of reasons why it's difficult. One of the reasons is the interface from the big company doesn't really have access to the sales leads. And it's a long process between where that person sits to accessing any potential prospects or customers. So they didn't know how to bridge that.
So you mean
process.
even within the same large corporation,
Correct.
you work with a department A,
Mhm.
but that does not necessarily connect you, startup company, to the sales or customer leads part.
Yeah, it almost never connects to.
Yeah, so it's
business
typical large
requirement.
corporation, okay.
Correct. So recognizing that, and then also recognizing that as much as the startup team feels like I'm bringing something really valuable and complementary to the big corporation, you're one of few hundreds, if not thousands. So yes, they're saying all the right things to you, but how much resource and attention would the big corporation put on you is a big question mark, right? So that went on for a really long time, more than a year. It came to a point of extreme level of frustration. And the startup team basically said, well, we have to cut the loss because we can't keep this going without seeing any of the returns. And I think a lot of times the pivotal moment came by luck, but to the earlier point I made regarding when a startup is trying to position, I'm solving everything, every problem under the sun to a very specific problem. When you make that transition, the startup actually took a long time to make that transition, right? Initially positioned way too wide. I've been advising them to position much narrower, specifically to solve one problem really well. That started to gain momentum. So, and then they realized that, yes, there are many other opportunities they can pursue, but if they can just focus on that one thing and be a complementary solution to the big corporation can bring to the market, then effectively one scenario would happen where a potential customer brought in by the big corporation bought into the value proposition of the big corporation, but when they went through the execution and implementation, this small startup can come in, bring that particular piece of value add product or service to make the integration or deployment way faster, cut it down from 8 weeks to 2 weeks, from 10 engineers to 2 engineers. That's where magic really happens. So, but the learning there is, gotta seize the right moment. If not, the startup is taking on a big burden of selling the overall solution to the prospect, which is really beyond the capacity of the startups. It's the big corporation stuff to sell on the overall value proposition. But then when that conversation is happening between the big corporation and the big prospect, come in at the right moment, right at the moment of implementation, cut down from 8 weeks to 2 weeks, 10 engineers to 2 engineers, that's where magic happens.
So basically, you're still talking about the, you recommend startup company to be very narrowly focused to kind of create a very, very compelling value prop that nobody can replace. That's why, it can accelerate.
Yeah, that's one important piece. And the other important piece is be the complementary solution to the big corporation, right? And timing is more important than most other aspects in that engagement. Because you go too early, you're taking on a job that you cannot fulfill. When you're coming too late, then it's too late.
It sounds like it's so complicated for a startup company to dance with large giants. So what are some of the general recommendations, like a startup company to hire the right people to do that? Or what's the general solution to tackle these huge challenges?
I think one is be extremely clear on the relationship. It's a complementary solution to augment some aspects of what this large corporation can bring to the table. That's one. Second, seek one-to-many opportunity. What do I mean? Seek any marketing broad enabling opportunity you can take when the large companies, they have no problem reaching broad set of prospects, but how do I tag along? Really try to solve that specific problem so you're visible to the broad set of potential customers, the leads, the prospects, right? And then figure out what's the ideal moment for you to go in, spend your limited resource with potential prospect to bring the deal home. So that'll be kind of the rough three-step thought process.
Right, yeah.
How I built my corporate career, reflection and advice.
Reflecting on your career advancement, what are some of the reflections and lessons you may share with us about the career advancement, and also kind of just the success in corporations?
Yeah. So for the limited progress I made in the past couple of decades, I kind of think back about a few points. One is really build a very strong personal brand. Personal brand is
a strong personal brand.
Yeah. So the personal brand is not something you can build by accident. We all have our personal brand. We like it or not, we recognize it or not, and that's how other people view us. And recognizing that takes time, consistency, and my personal brand in other people's eyes is almost always different than the personal brand I have in my own head. So why is there a delta, a difference? How do I compensate for that delta, right? So those are the things I want to lead with. Just be mindful and be conscious and be purposeful in building and sustaining that hopefully strong and positive personal brand. Second, really have a broad set of network, I call support network. Oftentimes I hear people giving advices that, hey, you just need to follow a big successful boss, you're going to be taken care of. True, there are cases like that, but that's also a high risk value proposition.
Why is it high risk?
The person may have enemies. The person may move to a different industry all of a sudden. The person may make a mistake and get fired one day. Then you don't have a support network anymore. So instead of being viewed to the point of our personal brand as I'm attached to somebody else, I want to be independent, successful individual myself, and by having a broad set of a supporting network, wide range of people who know me and recognize me and appreciate what I bring to the table is actually very important. And the last piece I would say is have a little bit of patience, because I understand that things move very fast and people don't necessarily want to spend decades in one corporation anymore, which is perfectly fine. But then to really seize the right moment needs time and luck. So if I'm always chasing for the next big thing, I may be missing by those pivotal moments by a narrow margin because I wasn't patient enough to wait for that right moment to happen. And then I moved on because I think this is done, I'm going to move on to chase the next thing. So having a little bit of patience, really self-examining whether or not I'm really seeing through all the opportunities here before I move on is actually important, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe let's go a little bit detail because you're talking about the building the personal brand. What are some of the specific kind of techniques or things that maybe as general, right? People can do to build a strong personal brand, especially from the eye of their colleagues.
Yeah. I'll start with recognize when I'm working with you or any other individual, we actually have a customer-client, customer-supplier relationship.
So you view those, colleague relation from that perspective.
Yeah, because today I may need something from you, right? Tomorrow you may need something from me. It's a lot of value exchanges.
Mm.
So I see people not paying close attention, and they realize, oh, you're coming to me all the time. You're asking my help all the time. So I'm going to position myself high and become a little bit more difficult to work with. Maybe without knowing, I became a little bit more arrogant because you need this so much from me,
Mm.
right? I'm at a higher position than you are because of that dynamic. But then something changed, organizational shifted, job rotated, whatever, all of a sudden, I'm no longer that person, you're that person. Then I go back and to you, then I show up as a different person.
Mm.
How are you gonna feel?
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna be very thrilled about what you're seeing there.
Mm.
So having that consistency to recognize that we're working on things together. There are things you need from me, there are things I need from you, and we all support each other to make a bigger thing happen. So am I meeting and exceeding other people's expectation? Am I meeting and exceeding the expectations I set for myself?
Mm.
And that's extremely important. So I say the the fastest way to ruin any trusted relationship is you set a high expectation and miss it. It doesn't take a second try, it takes one try to ruin that relationship, the trusted relationship. Now the opposite is interesting. Well, I set a high expectation, I exceeded that expectation, do you trust me now? The answer is a maybe, because trust takes a lot of time, I repeat.
Yeah.
This is where my analogy is building trust is almost like building a backyard. You don't decide one day, say, I'm going to put in 50 plants and 100 different flowers. I'm going to water them one day, and then they're all strong. They're all very strong. It doesn't work that way. I need to do that for weeks, if not months, sometimes years, to build a beautiful backyard. How fast can I ruin the backyard? 1 week. 1 week of negligence in the heat wave, the whole backyard is gone. That's so true for trusted relationship. Takes a long time and consistency to build. Takes one try.
Yeah, it's very, very true.
Yeah. So maybe I'm detouring a little bit, but
that's very good point.
That's the essence of building that strong, positive personal brand.
Chinese culture, doing and saying in workplaces.
Next question, basically relating to the Asian culture. Do you feel kind of a, and when I say Asian culture, I mean East Asian culture, right? Kind of give professionals like you some advantages or disadvantages that people need to be aware, and obviously need to leverage those advantages, and also try to mitigate or minimize those disadvantages when they manage their career.
Yeah, good question. I want to say my Chinese heritage probably didn't play any visible role in what I can see my career experience. However, what I've learned, and grew up in China as well as working with a lot of people across the world, has been extremely valuable. So a few things. One, there's always this debate about how much am I supposed to be visible? Like, oh, I'm doing a lot of work, but I'm seeing other people, they're all talk and not doing as much, but they
Like a self-advocate.
Yeah, but they get recognized more than I do. So what I do, this is where I say the Eastern Asian Chinese culture, if we use it right, it could be extremely valuable, because intrinsically, the group of people in particular a group of Chinese living in the United States, I think we're a self-selected community as well, right? This group of people doesn't really reflect the homeland distribution of population. However, some of the things could be extremely valuable: hardworking, go deep, be dependable, be knowledgeable, learn things, and don't want to be obsolete. However, there are elements of the heritage, if not compensated for, could become a little bit limiter, which is, oh, am I too humble? Am I too shy? Am I too um, conscious of how other people view me if I start doing self-promotion? So this is where I say, continue to do what you're supposed to do, which is learn, build, go deep, and do really good work. Also learn from people around you in terms of when you should promote yourself, you absolutely do it. Okay. And don't be shy about that. People should hear from you how you did it when you do something great. And that's not about bragging. That's just to fully represent your work. As you become more of the leaders, you no longer just represent yourself, you represent your team, your group, sometimes your company. So if you're too humble, then you kind of rob the opportunity away from your own team and company to be fully recognized. So I think from that perspective as well, so that, striking the balance is going to be the key word, right? If I do this much and only talk this much, that's a little bit, not doing myself or my team justice. But if I only do this much and talk this much,
the opposite.
That's not great. I don't think that's what I want to be, right? So there's no, absolute balance, because I think mentally I try to manage around this, right? Match this to, and again, kept emphasizing the team element that I'm not, just representing the work of myself. If I don't speak up, I don't really promote in the right moment for my team, and my team kind of, is not adequately recognized in those situations. Right. So I owe it to them.
For young professionals on career development/growth.
What's your advice to young, kind of a generation, young people, especially young Asian professionals?
Yeah.
In advancing their careers?
Yeah, I think I believe in what Steve Jobs mentioned in his famous Stanford speech, that career is something you only can make sense when you look from hindsight perspective, not forward perspective. So a lot of times, including myself, there are moments that I want to have a straight shot from here to there, using as a few steps as possible, as a few years as possible, and avoid the waste, quote, so to speak. When you connect the dots, when you look backwards, you realize, yes, there are moments that's wasted, but more that's because I'm watching Netflix too much, wasting my own time. I truly don't view experiences being wasted, but where things could become weird is just because I'm always chasing the next big thing, I'm disregarding what I have built so far, and I want to go straight there. And this is where I see people try multiple jumps at one shot. That creates a lot of collateral damage. One, what you have built so far is disregarded. And even if you can jump to that point, your foundation is relatively weak. Yeah. So you may be taking a career hit from here to here just to get to the hot field, which you could have built a multiple step strategy where I'm always learning and expanding, but I'm not aiming at one particular direction necessarily, because the future is this one thing that's not predictable. That's the nature of the future. So if I'm always lending, expanding, and expanding based on a core set of knowledge, experience, strength, and people supporting network I talked about earlier as well, that I'm always expanding organically. And some of the most pivotal career moments for me was absolutely unplannable. I couldn't have planned some of the moves just because those weren't part of the modeling I had or the realm of prediction I had. And just because I was reliably, consistently, building, expanding across all the things I was talking about, I happened to be that person to be ready when that opportunity came up. Again, that wasn't something I can plan for. Then I seized the opportunity, which launched me into a different direction. So those are the devices I would have. So it's a little bit counter to some of the common belief, but I believe in this one.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Basically say, although you cannot tell the specifics, but I think what you're talking about is you still want to kind of build up. So you're kind of expanding your opportunity pool. Mm-hmm. Although you do not know where you're going to land, but the opportunity pool is increasing. So that it's kind of bigger opportunity, broader. So that's kind of how you position or you build up.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And don't put artificial limitation to yourself, right? If I'm telling myself, say, I just can't do certain things, then mentally I would avoid trying to do those certain things. Then eventually that may become a significant limiter for my career because those become the must-have capabilities when you hit certain level or certain scope. So don't. I'll give you like not so relevant example. Growing up, I always hear really bright students telling me that, you know what, English is not my thing. I can't learn English. There's no such thing. You can't learn English. All Americans have learned English. So why it is a hard limiter that cannot be conquered? And over years, fast forward 10, 20 years later, I'm not saying English is everything. I do circle back to some of these people, and some of them do very well, but some of them have forfeited really potential good opportunities because they told themselves they cannot do one thing.
Like a self-imposing a limit.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching.